For those of you who didn't meet me last night, my name is Jamie Henley. I am the operations manager here at KWRI. And I work primarily with the K-Score and G5 growth programs. So I help market centers grow and bring in and retain agents. And I also help agents grow their businesses, which is, of course, what we're doing here tonight, right? That's what I'm going to get to do a little bit more of with y'all. So tonight we are wrapping up the lead follow-up stage of the Ignite program. We have talked about how to make sure that every lead that ends up in your database, how we follow up with those folks. Last night, we talked about how that relationship goes on and we continue to connect with them and provide value, and how that relationship can go on for quite a while. And tonight, we're going to talk about kind of this shift as we're getting people into that more transactional phase. This is really kind of where we wrap up the follow-up section and we start to move into that transactional area. So that's what we're going to dive into tonight. Any questions before we dive in about material that you have seen before? Okay. Was everybody able to engage in the homework portion where you dive into that success system and you start making those contacts and really digging into that database and setting up that touch campaign? I know we started to build that last night. Was anyone able to dig deeper into that today? Awesome. I love that you did that, Jennifer. It's going to make it a lot easier to keep that relationship building going when you've already got that set up for you. So great job in doing that. All right. Today, we are going to talk about finding the right people, right? We're going to find the motivated people who are in the right stages. We're going to learn about how people have to be able, ready, and willing before they can get into a transaction. We're going to specifically talk about qualifying buyers and qualifying sellers and kind of the different tools we use to do that. And then, as always, we're going to kind of just cover what we covered and see what was most impactful for y'all. And you're going to take that homework with you to do that daily success system and follow up so that you can continue to grow your business using the things that we're talking about in these sessions. So that is the game plan. As we're looking at that, does anything stand out for you that makes you go, hey, I'm really excited to dig into that portion? Anything that really tickles your fancy, if you will? You're excited for it all. The energy is up, or it's going to be. We're going to get there, right? All right. All right. So as we go in, kind of we'll dig into each one of these things. I want y'all to focus on that these are steps in a system, right? You want to do them kind of in this order. We want to know how to find the motivated before we start to identify if they're able, ready, and willing, and before we start to qualify folks, because if you don't have the motivated and they're not ready and able and willing, then it's not time to qualify them yet. And by qualifying them, we can kind of find those things out as well. So these kind of go in a little bit of a cycle, and you'll see them kind of come full circle. And that's one of the things we'll be looking at today. Right? All right. As we move in, you may have seen this or heard this. I know we talk a lot about the shift, especially in Ignite. Gary says your number one job as a real estate agent is to find ways to get in the path of motivated buyers and sellers. Okay. So by doing the things that you guys are doing and that you're learning in Ignite, that's the objective. This is the main objective on the things that we are working on through this program. Okay. So when we think about this quote, I want you to zero in on kind of the second path here, the path of motivated buyers and sellers. So tell me what you think motivated means. Who can tell me what you think that, what stands out to say, what does motivated mean? They're able, willing, and ready. Hey, you're jumping ahead now. But yeah, that's it, right? They're in a position where they're ready to move forward, and they can move forward. And they have that want to, if you will. Okay. When you think about the 80-20 principle that we talk about in the 6 personal perspectives, and you all talked about those at the beginning of this course, right? You want to spend that 20% focusing on this motivated buyers and sellers. You want to be in front of lots of people, right? Because you don't always know who is going to fit that criteria of being motivated, but focus your 20% on finding those people, identifying them, and then staying in front of those people first. Okay. So how we do that? We're going to find the motivated. And before we do that, we're going to dive into kind of the steps that we go through there. Before we do that, I want you guys to give me some ideas about any kind of things, those little things in your head that says it's hard to find buyers and sellers because, or things like that. What stands out in your head that might be something that you think about that might be blocking you from finding those folks? What are some of those things that maybe go through your head on occasion? Has anybody ever thought, you know what? Finding good leads costs money. I've got to buy leads to be able to find enough leads to run a business. Has anybody ever thought that? Great news. Tony's never thought that. Thanks, Tony. I'm glad, because you don't have to, right? You don't have to throw the dollars at it necessarily. Okay, Lisa says, because I'm a new agent, they might want to prefer to work with someone with more experience. Okay. I don't get out enough to meet new people. That could definitely be something that you put a blocker up in your head. But here's the reality, Lisa. We'll start with Lisa's. Is what did we discover yesterday about how many people folks are talking to before they make that decision? Yeah, they're talking to one. So Lisa, if you're that one and you've got a great value proposition and you are qualifying your buyers and sellers and finding those people who are ready, able, and willing, then you're the perfect one, right? So remember that while you don't have the experience, every time you do these things, you're gaining more experience. And that if they're only talking to one person, 75% of the time, right? If they're only talking to one person, as long as you are that first person they talk to that you're in front of because you've been staying in relationship, then you will show them that it's not necessarily about the experience, it's about the offerings that you can give them, right? You're going to give them great service. You're going to give them the knowledge that you have. And if you don't know something, I'll bet you're going to ask and find that out, right? So you're not going to leave them hanging because you don't know something. You're going to find those answers and serve them to the best of your ability, right? Okay. Jennifer said, I don't get out enough to meet new people. Okay. That can definitely be, I don't get out much either. I work from home, so I don't get out into the community as much as I'd like to. What's kind of the flip side of not getting out enough to meet new people? What's a different way to frame that in your head? Anybody have any ideas on that? Do you well, let me throw this one out there. Yeah, Zdenka, use social media, right? I meet people all the time on social media. It's one of the main platforms that I use to connect with people. What about tonight? I got to meet you all last night, right? By doing something like this, even on a virtual style training or panel or seminar you can attend. Not only can you meet people in that fashion, if it's a topic you're all interested, you can also present in that format to continue that relationship building with folks. So not necessarily going out. What about going to the grocery store? I don't know if y'all go to the grocery store. That's not a thing I do very often anymore, because they told me I could just put in an order and then they would bring it to my car. And I said, yes, please, I'll do that. But if you're going to the grocery store, make it a goal to speak to someone in the grocery store, right? That may be a person that you're able to connect with. And of course, what do you have on when you're going to the grocery store? We talked a little bit about it yesterday. That's right, Jennifer, your name tag, right? You're wearing it. So when you say hello and they're like, man, you're the nicest person, and they realize that you work in real estate, then you can start to build that relationship and go down that path that we talked a little bit about last night. So really, that's a good one. Brad, I love that call out. Some type of change generally creates motivation. There's a lot of different reasons why people may become motivated. And a lot of times we talk about all of the D's, right? Divorce, debt, downsizing, death in the family. Those are some of the things that can shift someone into being motivated. So that's a really good point that you bring up there. Okay. Let's look at kind of the raw data, because that's going to show us a little bit more about the realities here. So when we look at, this is data from the NAR, so the National Association of Realtors. They run this information. They run these polls every year on anyone who goes under contract on a transaction, and anyone who closes a transaction, and they ask them these questions. And these are how buyers find their agents. So as you look at the chart on your screen, what stands out to you from this batch of data?
Referrals from friends, neighbors, and relatives are the highest for all buyers, first-time buyers, and repeat buyers.
By a little bit or by a lot of it?
A lot.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Zdenka. There is a big old gap on everything else, right? There, you could add the next two together and it wouldn't reach that. So definitely the number one way that people are connecting with that one person they're talking to as their agent is that they are getting referrals. And we talked about that yesterday, right? That we want to stay top of mind for folks, not just for that individual, but for the people they know as well. Because when you are in relationship and you serve and provide value to one person, then they want to relate that to other people. Yeah, Brad, exactly right. It's a relationship business. We want those referrals, Lisa. So when you think about that, it really ties back to what we talked about yesterday, right? That you've got to know the people, you've got to be in relationship with the people. And what we're going to dig into a little bit more today is, once that connection gets made, once that referral happens, how do we make sure that we're gonna check all the boxes for these folks, right? I want you also to look at the second one. So the second row there, the first gray one, somebody read that for me, if you would be so kind. Just go ahead and unmute and tell us what that second row says.
It says used agent previously for a transaction.
Used agent previously for a transaction. And that's the second highest for all buyers and repeat buyers. Obviously, it doesn't make sense that they would use the same buyer if they're a first-time home buyer, right? So what that means is, not only are you've got the opportunity, number one, to make those connections through referrals, but what this means is, if they've bought a home or sold a home with you before, they're more likely to use you again, right? So when we're looking for buyer relationships and we're looking for that to get buyers under contract, keep in mind that people who have listed with you before often become the buyers, right? And the same is true in inverse as well, that your sellers, when somebody sells, they become a buyer. Once somebody is a buyer, at some point they're going to sell. Obviously, the sell to buy relationship happens pretty quickly, whereas once they buy, then it's going to be a little while, hopefully, before they sell, right? So definitely looking back at those folks that you have worked with before as an opportunity to connect. So what are some of the things that we've talked about in how we find these people? How do we connect with these people? What are some of the methods that we've talked about up until this point that you guys have gone through in these Ignite sessions? Or what are some of the methods that you use to find these folks?
Well, find the motivated.
Yeah. How do we do that, Deborah? What are some of the ways that you do that?
Well, I have my database. I just, I touch them as much as I should? No, but I make sure that I'm in their presence or in their company or whatever with monthly touches so that when they are motivated, they do reach out. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's exactly like we talked about yesterday, right? That staying top of mind and connecting with folks regularly. That's what we want to be doing. We talked yesterday about what was the method we talked about on what if you're at a loss. Hey, I don't know what to talk about. What was the method that we talked about yesterday and that we've talked about in previous sessions? Do you remember what that was?
Well, we used Ford for one thing, just finding out about them, talk about them. Mhm.
That's it. Talk about them and what's going on in their world. That's a great way to just connect with people who are in your sphere of influence to make sure you're top of mind for them. And if the referral, they know somebody who is looking to buy, sell, or invest, that you're still top of mind for them as well. What about just general lead generation? What different lead generation methods have y'all talked about or that you use to get those people into these relationships where we're then following up? What are some of those lead generation levers that y'all have in play?
Well, we talked about events and
Mhm.
talked about events and just the smart plans, the regular touches, the 36 touch. We talked about that.
Yeah, any and all of those things in the 36 touch plan is how we're keeping top of mind with those folks, right?
Mhm.
Okay. What if we look at the data on the flip side of this? This is how sellers find their agents. Oh, both Zdenka and Brad said open houses. Yeah, great lead generation tool. And we talked more about those last night, right? On some of those ideas on how we capture the leads once we're at an open house. Thank you. Okay, what stands out here when we're looking at how sellers find their agent? What jumps off the screen for y'all?
Well, the used agent previously is higher.
Yeah, definitely that's higher on this one. So for your sellers, they are more likely to use somebody that they've already used in the past. Great point, Deborah. Thank you. What else do y'all see there? Seeing anything that looks kind of familiar in the trend on this page?
Well, still, again, the referrals from friends, neighbors, and relatives are still always the highest, buyer or seller. Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. This is still the top way that people find their person is by getting that referral from someone that they know and trust. So if we know that they're doing that, we again want to stay top of mind. But I love that, Deborah, you called out that use the agent for a previous transaction is much higher for this population. than it is with our buyers. So keep in mind, I think this is a really great way to reiterate that while lead generation is extremely important in the real estate world, as in most businesses, that follow up with our existing fear and our existing database is equally, if not more important, depending on the types of transactions that you want to be conducting, right? Listings, we want that to be at least half of our business. And so we want to make sure that we're really building that relationship and that follow-up with the people who we've worked with before, because so many of them go back to the same person they've worked with before, right? So just like we talked about with finding those buyers, what are some of the tools that we can use that we talked about yesterday and in previous sessions that we can use to connect with these people? The people who might be looking to sell. What are some of the ways we can do that?
Well, their updated market on their home.
Yeah, doing that market analysis or the CMAs to give them a valuation, using those MOFRs. Good, both Tony and Jennifer said using the MOFRs for sure, absolutely. And dare I say, just like Deborah said on finding the buyers, it's all of those things we talked about yesterday, right? It's still the 36 touches to get folks to that transaction, whether they're buyers or sellers. You don't necessarily have to be sending different messaging to those people who are already in your database. You still want to do the prospecting and the marketing, but making sure that we're following up consistently in those 36 touches and those very different types of touches with both potential buyers and sellers, because we just don't necessarily know, right? I don't know that, I don't know that Brad's going to buy or sell in the next 3 years, let alone know he's definitely going to sell, he's definitely going to buy, right? So if I don't know yet, I've just got to be top of mind for both. So sometimes it's just about sending the message to get to the transaction. And then once we get there, that's what we're going to dig into here in a minute, is how do we make sure that they're in that place where they're motivated, they're ready, they're good to go, and get the additional information that's going to allow us to serve them at the highest level. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and jump forward. Any questions about these statistics or about kind of the messaging? I think you guys have got it, right? The idea here is that this is just about staying in relationship until we get to this point where we're ready to go ahead and cross over into a transaction. And once we get to the transaction, then there's some additional questions to ask, right? We're going to move out of that forward general questions about who they are and what they want and what they're doing. And we're going to go more specifically into transaction-based questions. Okay. All right. Does this look familiar to anyone? Phew, I've got some nods. Hopefully we've seen this guy a time or two, right? So what are we looking at on our screen right now?
We're looking at the opportunities section of Command.
Yeah, this is your opportunities pipeline in Command. So when we look at this, obviously on this one, we've got buyers and leases. Right above that is sellers. We've got all three pipelines that show up in our opportunities. And this is our pipeline of business, right? So generally, when we are looking at our pipeline of business, we want to have either a really good tagging system to identify folks, or we want to be really clear with what goes into each one of these buckets or these stages, if you will, right? When we're talking about cultivate, appointment, active, under contract, when we're talking about those different phases, generally they're going to spend longer times in some more than others. So when we have people in that cultivate stage, who do we find tends to be in the cultivate stage? Who might fall into that category?
Those people you met at open houses, the ones that you just basically a lead.
Yeah, they're kind of like a warm to hot lead. They're looking, they're definitely, maybe they've responded and said this is something they're interested in, or they're going to be interested. Maybe they've got a new job. You're finding out. Yeah, Tony, exactly. Fence stragglers, maybe those people are here. Those people who have shown some interest, whether they're like, yes, I'm looking right now, or they're kind of sticking just a toe in the water. We want to identify those people and put them into our pipeline, and then identify them as as A, B, or C, right? So our A buyers are those people who are ready within the next 30 days. Our B is that 30 to 60 range. Our C is that kind of 90 days to 6 month time period. But really, we want all of those people to go in here so we can start offering the value, giving the information about their neighborhood, the neighborhood they're interested in, and starting to keep an eye on what they're responding to, right? So making sure we get them in there so that we can see that quickly in an instant, and we can see how many people we have in our pipeline at any time. One of the things that I believe will be dug into a little bit more on Thursday is the volume calculations that run down there at the bottom, and how that works as you go through these stages, and how, essentially it's a higher percentage likelihood of closing. So those numbers are going to boost up, and you can base on what you want your goals to be, what you need to have in that pipeline at any given time, right? You have to have an idea of, if at the end of the year I want to be at this number, you do just like we did last night, and you break that down backwards to get to where you should be at in a month or in a week, or what have you there. Okay. If you guys are not yet familiar with Command, that's okay. Reach out to your market center tech trainer or your regional tech trainer to make sure that you understand how things move through these pipelines, and how you can really effectively use data and tagging and the migration through these phases to give yourself a good idea of where people are at and what's sitting out there in your pipeline for upcoming transactions. Okay. Okay. What so far has been impactful for y'all, as we've talked about a few things up until this point in the data and in looking at our pipeline? What stands out?
Well, the stats of agent you used before, I thought would be a little bit higher, but it's not.
Okay. For both buyers and sellers,
Yeah.
Deborah, or
Both. Yeah, both.
yeah, a little bit surprising that repeat customers are not as high as you might think. What might be a reason for that, do you think?
My negligence.
I think that might be the case. Not yours, though. Other agents, right? You're doing all those things we talked about yesterday with your 36 touches and making sure you're staying top of mind and staying in relationship and connecting with people. But yeah, the number one reason usually why people don't return to an agent they've worked with before is they just kind of forgot, right? Sometimes it's been several years and that person doesn't follow up with them. And unless it's somebody that you know, like, and trust every day, then it's not likely that you're going to think of them necessarily when that transaction timeframe pops up, right? Anything else stand out for y'all?
You don't need to pay for leads.
Yeah, you don't need to pay for leads. I think that's, we talked a little bit about how every lead is a good lead. They're just not always a good lead today, because everybody's going to buy, sell, or invest in real estate at some point. Some leads you're going to nurture for 30 days because they're hot leads. They're those A leads, right? But you might have people in your database who you follow up with for 7 or 8 years before they ever move forward. So that's one of the kind of mythbuster things that I always like to say is, like, there's no such thing as a bad lead. It's somebody in your database who at some point is going to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. You just have to be the person who's in relationship with them when they come to that time, right? So very, very good point. You don't have to pay money to get leads. You already know people, I promise. Even if you don't know a lot of people, your people know people too.
Well, you have to be right there, because there is so much distraction and so much out there that, when they're ready, they can, if who's ever in their face that day is going to be the person.
Yeah, right. Whatever they're seeing right now, the shiny object of the moment. If you are not dropping the shiny nuggets all along the way, then some great billboard may catch their attention, right? So great point that you have to, it has to be a constant relationship. It can't just be every so often. You've got to keep it consistent so you remain in relationship and remain front and center in their mind, so that when they think of real estate, they think of you and how much they know, like, and trust you, right? All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I appreciate that. All right. So we've found the motivated because we're in contact with them and they have said, yeah, I'm ready to do the thing, or I think I'm ready to do the thing, or I got the new job, or something has changed in their life. Like I think it was Brad said earlier, those changes that create that motivation. One of those things has happened. So we know that this is coming for them. Has anybody ever heard the phrase ready, willing, and able? All right, this is a relatively common phrase. Thanks for the hands, guys. I got some nods too. I believe you're paying attention. Yeah, this is something we've definitely heard. This is something that gets used in lots and lots of contexts. But when we talk about it, we're going to talk about it in a different order, because we're going to talk about able, ready, and willing. So why do you think that we start with able instead of ready, willing, and able? We say able, ready, and willing. Why do you think you start with able?
Because they may not qualify at this point in time. So they have to be able to purchase or to sell.
Yeah, great point. Kanisha says that they're able to afford if they're going to buy. They have to be able first or they can't be ready. Or ready to sell. Yeah. People are always ready and willing, but can't qualify or don't have the money. Yeah, that's exactly it. You guys are all right. I think everybody's kind of saying the same thing in a little bit different words. I'm willing, like I'm always willing to buy a house. I'm willing to buy $1 million house because they have a lot of the features that I want in my life. I'm ready. Like, yeah, I could pull the trigger on that. Am I able? Well, maybe not so much on that one, right? Jennifer, I like the way you said this, that people are always ready and willing. Because we like those things. We like the idea, things are changing. We want to be able to have the nice things and have all the features we want. So that makes us definitely be able to be looking and willing to make those moves happen. But if you don't have the ability, the financial ability, or the ability to move into a different situation, then whether you're ready and willing doesn't really matter, right? So really good points. We start with able because then we know who to focus on. That's right, Brad. I have big dreams too, right? When you guys call to Ford to talk me, make sure you ask about my D. It's that I'm going to have all those $1 million houses, but that I'm ready and willing to have, right? But we want to make sure that we're spending the right amount of time with those people, because the people who are able are going to fall into that A gap, right? Those are the people who are looking to make that transaction in the near future. They've got the means to do so. Yeah, these people may even be pre-qualified, right? If they're not, then we want to get them pre-qualified, right? So that we have the proof of that ability that's in place there. Okay. So as we're thinking about that, this quote is from the MREA. This is on page 13.4 or 193 on your, depending on the format you have of your book. But focus becomes increasingly possible in direct proportion to how clear you are about what you want when you want it, and what you have to do to get it. So I like this quote from an agent perspective. This is a really good way to kind of narrow in and focus down, starting with your big why, right? On what do I got to do? When do I got to do it? How am I going to do the darn thing to get to those things that I want? But it's not just applicable to agents. This is applicable in every aspect of our lives, and it's applicable to our buyers and sellers, or potential buyers and sellers, right? They don't always necessarily know the when or the how, right? But most of the time, folks know what, right? They know what they want, and sometimes we can help them develop that when they want it, or they have the ability to get it, and how on earth are they gonna, what do you need to do to make that happen, right? So able is kind of what fits into those other categories. The what is kind of identifying that readiness and that willingness. The ability might be in that last section of what do I need to do to get there, right? A lot of times your ability is going to come in that phase. Okay. So when we look at these intertwining circles, obviously the target is dead center there, right? We want to find people who fit right into there. And when we're determining that, the easiest way to find out if somebody fits into one or two or all of these categories is what? How do you think the best way for us to find out people's status is? I promise this is not a hard question, so don't overthink it. You ask. That's it. You just communicate and you talk to them and you ask. You come from curiosity, you ask them the questions, and you just stay in conversation. Sometimes people are going to come right out and say it. That's not always the case. They're definitely not going to say it if you're not already communicating with them, right? They're not just going to say, hey, I saw you at the store today, random person off the street, and I decided I want to sell my home. That's not usually how it pans out. Usually we want to be in conversation and asking them those questions, not only for themselves, but also potentially for those referrals, right? Asking if they know anybody who is looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. Always having that kind of top of mind as an option that they can connect you to those people. Okay. So when we go into, so if you turn in your page, I think this is on the bottom of page 13.4 or page 193. That should be where these kind of definitions are. I think there's a blank space that y'all can fill in. So we talked about what it means to be able. This means people are financially able, they are legally able, they are in a position where nothing is restricting them in any way from being able to move into a transaction to buy or sell. What do you think it means for somebody to be ready for that transaction? What does that mean to you?
Well, in a buyer's case, they've been pre-qualified and all their funds have been verified. In a seller's case, make sure you run the title and the O&E and make sure you know who actually owns the house and what other encumbrances there might be that need to be rectified before you can sell.
Yeah, which would also fall in a little bit to able, right? You can't sell a house that you don't own. If there's a lien on it, you've got to clear that out first. So definitely that is falls into both, with that ready, kind of falling into what we talked about before with motivation. They've got to wanna, right? You can't move a boulder if it's not ready to go, right? So keeping in mind that people have to be in a place where, yeah, exactly, right, Zdenka, where the timing is right. This has to be the time that they want to move forward. And that usually comes back to those changes that we talked about earlier. Yeah, like Brad said, they've had a change in their career or their job, or maybe their spouse or someone in their family has. Maybe they're going to school, maybe they're returning from school, maybe they have kids going to school. whatever those changes are tend to be those things that ignites that motivation. And that's where that readiness kicks in, is really in relation to the motivation. Okay. And then what do you think is willing? What makes somebody willing? This one's just a little bit different than the readiness. Yeah, they want to. They have the energy and the desire, that eagerness and that excitement about moving forward. That's where the willingness comes from. They have that drive to do this and lean into it now. Okay. So just kind of a recap there, if y'all did not get that. Oops, sorry, I clicked forward. So able is that the legal ability, right? Nothing is physically holding them back financially or legally. Readiness is that motivation factor. They have a motivation to buy, sell, or invest. And then that willingness is kind of the energy around it. They're excited about it. They're eager and they're ready to move forward. I shouldn't use ready to describe willing though, right? Okay. So once we've identified that somebody is able, ready, and willing, we then want to decide what level of able, ready, and willing are they. And when we talk about that, we talk about this idea of the ABC framework that I referenced a little bit when we were talking about the pipeline. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how we identify those people. So when we talk about the A, B, and C kind of levels, if you will, of opportunities as we're classifying folks, this is the kind of bottom line on timelines for those folks. You can see this little chart at the bottom of page 13.4 or 193. Again, depends on the format of the manual that you're looking at. And we're looking at identifying those in generally with a tag or where you put them in their pipeline, with one of these three categories as we're putting them in the pipeline. Anybody who doesn't meet one of these three criteria probably doesn't need to be yet in our pipeline. They're going to stay in our database forever and ever, right? We're going to continue to communicate with them, but this is what triggers them to go into the pipeline. So for our C buyers or our C sellers, we're looking at, more than 60 days. These are the people who are looking at the 3 months, 6 months range. They have the motivation. Maybe they've got that job that they are going to be doing, but there's no urgency with this, right? For our B folks, this is kind of in the month range. They are actively looking, poking around, might have done some online shopping. Some of those folks are usually not necessarily quite as willing right now. They usually have the ready. Generally, they've got the able. With our C buyers, they may not yet have the able in place, right? They may be starting to get qualified. With our A buyers, these are our folks who are there. There's the urgency. They want to do the thing. They want to go look this weekend. They have found properties that they're interested. They're really sure on what they're looking for. They've been qualified. They're super motivated. You want to get these people in and connected as soon as possible so that you can get them into a buyer's agreement or a seller's agreement, kind of put things in writing because they're ready to go. They've got that ability. They are ready. They've had whatever change it is that has motivated them, and they've got that sense of urgency to really get the ball rolling now. Okay. Any questions about the distinctions here? Do y'all use those in your business, or do you use any different kind of tagging in your business that kind of has the same ideology there? Different tagging. Jennifer, would you mind sharing what kind of tagging you use that has the same kind of idea?
So we, my team uses Brevity, and even when we had Boomtown, it was the same thing. There's hot, which is your A buyer. There's nurture, which is your B, and then there's watch, which is your C. Then with brevity, you've got archive, inactive. You have a few more categories with brevity, but it's basically the same thing. It's just called hot, nurture, watch, archive, inactive, trash, past client. Might be one more. We just switched over to brevity, so I don't have them all memorized.
Gotcha. So a lot of those folks are going to fall into kind of the database area, but not necessarily into the pipeline yet, right?
Yeah, with brevity, when they go into the pipeline, well, and this is how our team works. When they go into what's called our pipeline, so we create a transaction for any listing appointment that you go on, you're automatically in the pipeline. And then we don't put the buyers in pipeline until you have a buyer agency.
Yeah,
And then
makes
you
sense.
go in
So
the
that would essentially be an appointment at that point as well, right?
pretty much. So then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, if you need $1 today, you go straight to your pipeline tool, and that's where you focus.
Gotcha. So pipeline for y'all is kind of the same thing, different name, right? Opportunities is what the name of that pipeline is in Command, and it's just called a
Yeah.
pipeline in your software.
Yeah.
Okay. Love that. Anybody else who uses different tagging terminology to identify these folks? No? Okay. I know I have met with people who use like a hot, warm, cool. A lot of times people generally refer to those terms when we're talking about leads. So I would kind of pick one or the other. I wouldn't use the hot, warm, cold sort of verbiage on both leads and on people's motivation to sell. That's more in the connection that you're making, as opposed to their readiness and willingness and ability to move forward. Okay. Any questions about any of the things we've covered so far and how they kind of fit together?
I like this willing to do business in the number of days, because basically you're saying willing to sign a buyer's agency agreement or sign a listing agency agreement, and those may take any number of months or whatever. So, but I like that it talks about they're willing to go into an agreement within those time periods.
Yeah, that's a really good call out, Brad, because this doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to buy or sell a home in this time period, but it means that they're going to kind of buckle down, get into that agreement with you, like you said, willing to sign and really get into the business of real estate with you. It may take a little bit of time to find the right place or to get a seller for the home, or a buyer for the home. But yeah, this is that willing to have the appointment, lock in, and kind of buckle down with you. So that's a really good way to call that out. So once we've identified folks who are able, ready, and willing, we've given them this A and B and C kind of identification on where they're at and how quickly we're going to be able to get them into a transaction and help them find that. The next thing we want to do is go a step deeper into what we call qualifying our buyers and qualifying our sellers. Okay. This generally is where we start to ask questions about those things we talked about. What are you looking for? When are you looking for it? How are you going to get there? This is how we're going to get to the root of those in this qualification process. So we talked a little bit in earlier sessions about creating that win-win framework when we're talking to our folks. Now we're really zeroing in on providing them with the right tools at the right time for the right transaction, right? You're not going to you're not necessarily going to be sending 3-2 homes to a seller that would be something you'd want to do with a buyer, but you have to identify what that looks like. You also want to make sure, let's say you've got a buyer, maybe they're looking for that $1 million home. You're probably not going to send them the 3 2s that are in the $250,000 range, right? But until we know what those things are, then we can't best serve them and their needs. So finding out what those are is going to be really important. We want to make sure that we are writing those things down, whether that's digitally or on the form, or making sure we're putting that information into command so that we can go back to it. There's got to be a record of it, because what the last thing we want to do is ask somebody these same questions repeatedly, because then they feel like we're not hearing them, we're not listening to them, and we're not taking what they're saying to heart and feeling that it's important to us. Okay. One of the ways we can do that is through using a checklist, right? For example, we have these built into command. We've got checklists that you can build in there for each stage that says these are the different steps and things we're accomplishing. As we go into, we're going to go into some documents to qualify our buyers and sellers. And it's just, ask this question, then this question, then this question. So we get all of the answers we need to serve them at the highest level. And then, of course, as we are connecting with folks, we want to make sure that we are abiding by fair housing regulations, following all the guidelines there, and guiding people in a non-biased way. Okay. So what are the questions we're going to ask? What does that checklist look like? What are we going to do and ask to move forward? If you look at page 13.6 or page 195, depending on your format, these are the questions. This is a sample of the questions that we would use to guide a buyer lead through this qualifying process, so we can bring them what they're looking for, right? So, for example, if you look at the second page there, it says, have you already been pre-approved for a lender? Yes or no? So if they say yes, we're having a very different conversation than if they say no, right? If they say no, that's probably one of the first steps we want to get them plugged into, is connecting them to a lender so that they can get pre-qualified and they have an idea of what that range is, and they can answer those questions on what those financial obligations are going to make sense for them. If they say yes, then we have that range. We know what payment they're looking for. We know what they can qualify for, so that we have a range, so that we're not looking at $1 million houses and $250,000 houses, right? We really want to zero in on what's going to be the right place for them. Okay. All right. So what I want to do real quick is talk through this a little bit with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be the agent, and I'm going to kind of start off this conversation. And if y'all don't mind, raise your hand if you're willing to play along with me and be my buyer. So we're working with buyers. So who's willing to answer some questions for me as a buyer? Anybody? I promise it'll be fun. You can talk in a silly accent if you want. Anybody willing to answer some of the questions? And maybe we can popcorn around a little bit.
I will.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deborah. I think Zdenka is willing to play with us too. So, all right. So we're coming into this. This is maybe our first appointment. We've been in conversation with these folks. We've built the relationship, and they said, yeah, I think we're ready to move forward. And we're going to come into the conversation and get this basic information first, right? Hopefully that stuff at the top, the date and the lead source, those are going to be something that you fill out. You don't need to ask them those, because you're going to know the answers to those. But we're going to go in, we're going to say, hey, Deborah, I'm so excited to help you find this new home that you're looking for. I know you've had some exciting things going on in your world. And I want to just ask you a few questions so that I can make sure that I provide you with the highest level of customer service. So let's start with the basics. What's the best way for me to reach you?
Cell phone.
Okay, awesome. What's your cell phone number? I just want to confirm what I have here.
Okay, 612-735-9839.
If y'all did not write down her number to be your referral partner, you missed an opportunity. Deborah, remind us where you are.
Minnesota.
She's in Minnesota. If you have friends in Minnesota who would like to buy, sell, or invest, send them to Deborah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had that correct. And as we're moving forward, when's going to be the best time for me to reach out to you? What time of day really makes the most sense for you?
Afternoons. Mhm.
Afternoons? Okay. Is there a specific time range, like after 1, after
Well,
3, or?
between 1 and 4. Mhm.
Okay. Between 1 and 4. Okay. Makes sense. So after lunch, you're ready to talk to me.
Mhm.
Okay. Have you been out with anybody else to look at any properties, out either with somebody or on your own?
Just going through, well, I like to go through the Parade of Homes.
Okay. Yeah, that's really fun to kind of not only look for different home things, but also they've got different designs that can be really interesting to get lots of ideas flowing. Love that. So I'm excited to be the person who kind of gets to go through that experience with you, since it sounds like you have at least an idea of what you're looking for there. Is there anyone else who's going to be going into this transaction with you?
No.
No? Okay. Just wanted to make sure so that I am not sending one information to one person and not the other. All right. And then as we're looking, is it just going to be you in the home, or do you have other family members or friends who are going to be staying here with you?
No, just me.
Just you? Okay. Perfect. Perfect. We can definitely work with that. How long have you been looking? Is this a new kind of just dabbling, or have you been hunting for a while?
No, just dabbling. Always looking.
Always looking. I get that.
Mhm.
Especially with like those parade of home style homes where you can get so many ideas and you don't have to have, you don't have to be looking. Okay. So then why have you decided now that you're ready to pull the trigger and you're gonna actually make the move?
Well, because I'd like to downsize a bit and a little smaller home and maybe into more generated age bracket to myself. A
Okay,
community.
gotcha. So a little bit of changes. It's just you
Yeah.
now. So you're maybe building some community along with kind of getting a smaller place for you to hang out, huh?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. That seems like a great reason to be on the move to me. Do you rent or do you own now, Deborah?
I own.
Do you?
Mhm.
You own your home now? All right.
Mhm.
And are you looking to sell your home, or are you going to go ahead and keep that property as well?
Well, I don't know yet.
Okay.
It's possible that I might keep it. Mhm.
All right. Well, if you have any questions about that process, I'm happy to help there as well as we get a little further down the line and you're starting to make some additional decisions.
Mhm.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Let's see. Do you know yet if how you're planning to pay as we're moving into the new home? Since you're not sure if you're selling the existing home, do you know if you're going to pay cash or if you're going to finance, or what that's going to look like for you, or have you determined that?
Well, that depends on how much equity I can find in my home, or whether I would pay cash or finance.
Okay, definitely makes a difference. So you have not had that equity valued yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. Would you like me to connect you with, I have several different lenders who I work with. Would it be helpful for me to get you connected there?
Yes, it would. Mhm.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to give you their information. Here it is. So Deborah, with that, is that going to affect what your down payment looks like as well?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the primary driver of, will your equity be primarily put towards the down payment? Is that kind of what you're thinking there?
Maybe not all of it. Maybe not
Okay.
all of it. Mhm.
Okay.
Depends on the home, whether or not I need to do repairs or remodeling or whatever. So. Mhm.
Okay. That totally makes sense to me. I appreciate you sharing that with me. So as we're looking, have you gotten pre-qualified for what you're looking for, or are you going to wait until after you get that equity evaluation first?
I'd like the equity evaluation first. Mhm.
Totally makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Do you have a general ballpark idea of what price range you're looking at?
Probably around 400. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. And you mentioned that it's just going to be you in that. Is anybody else going to be influential in the buying decision that maybe isn't going to stay in the home, but if you have children in the area, is that
Mhm.
going to be a factor of you know where you are in
Well, my daughter always has an opinion, so there we go.
whether you ask it or not?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll make sure that you have a chance to run things by your daughter as you're starting to make decisions to make sure that that's going to fit with her fitting
Mhm.
into your life still as we're moving forward. Okay, just a couple more questions and then we can go ahead and wrap up. I appreciate you being so honest with me. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being like I need to buy a home right now, and 1 being nah, I like to dabble and go to the parade of homes, but I'm not really actively looking. Where would you say you are right now?
Probably about 7, 8, right in there.
Okay, so 7, 8, we're, you know, it's not on fire immediate, got to move out tomorrow, but definitely you're looking and ready to take a look at some homes and find the right one.
Mhm.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect. What would make that become a 10?
If I found that absolute perfect home. Mhm.
Okay, so not necessarily any situation that might trigger that, but it's really about finding the right spot for you.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any deadlines or timelines that we need to make sure that you are settled into a new home by? Is there like holidays or new jobs or anything like that?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay,
Mm.
perfect. So the timeline is a little more flexible, just it's really about finding the right spot.
Mhm.
Okay, I love that. So then the next step, based on this information, it seems like I really could be of help for you. What I'd love to do next is just go ahead and schedule a time where we can sit down together and start kind of checking out a few different properties and talking about what's going to be the right fit. Would you be available at this time or that time?
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm going to say real times there. Which one's going to work better for you? And she's going to say that time because this time isn't it. So anything that stands out in just hearing that walkthrough?
Well, you always affirmed everything I said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
We want to, we've never been like, oh my gosh, that.
Yeah.
It's always yes and, right? It's never no, but it's kind of that yes and. So one of the things that's important is that affirmation. And Deborah, thanks for playing with me. I appreciate you being willing to answer my questions even without a silly accent. Um, but
Yeah.
that you're exactly right. Saying, yeah, I totally agree with that, and tell me more about that.
Mhm.
Those things so that your client feels heard, right? And also doesn't feel like you're making any sort of judgments towards them,
Right.
or
Mhm.
that you know you are creating any sort of barriers or blockers based on what their situation is. It's really important to keep that.
Mhm.
Okay. What else? Anything that stood out for y'all? Okay. When we look at those questions, so as you're looking at those questions on your screen or on page 13.7, do you feel like we have determined whether Deborah was able? Do we feel like we identified that she was able to move forward with a transaction? What might be some questions that would help us answer is Deborah able? What are some of the questions that show up here that would tell us that information?
Well, the fact that you wanted to, that you offered to, supply lenders, that would determine if you're able.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when we're asking them, If they own their home, that's one, right? And then we're also asking for if they've been pre-qualified. In your case, you were looking for the equity. Have you gotten that number, right? So those are questions that are going to tell us if you have that ability to move forward with a transaction. What about readiness? Do we feel like we've gauged the readiness by asking these questions? Did we find any motivation? Yeah. What questions might lean a little bit into that motivation factor and them being ready?
When you asked her between 1 and 10 where she's at, she did stated that she's not in a rush, but she's kind of 7, 8. And as soon as she finds the right home, she is willing and ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. That, I
you-
mean, it puts it almost exactly in how we talked about in engaging it by those numbers on that readiness to go ahead and move forward. What about willing, that kind of motivation factor? Do you think that that one leans in there as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
readiness, a lot of these questions really lean into the readiness, right? Asking about what change has prompted, what kind of things she's looking for, right? She's looking to downsize because things have changed and it's now just her in the home, finding out things like that. And then that willingness, that sense of urgency a little bit comes into play in that 1 to 10 question of like, is there a fire that's lit here? Or do we have a little bit more time to hunt a little bit? Thank you so much for answering those. And again, Deborah, thank you for being willing to role play with me. Okay. So as you'll see in your book, the next section is a role play. We're going to go ahead. We're not going to do the role play, but I want you to do this. It's a little bit hard to do this in a digital format. So what I'd like you to do is, as part of your homework, do this with somebody. So write it down and just take that oh my gosh, the buyer qualification form. Take those questions and do it with your spouse or your child. Not maybe your little child, but if you have an older child or an adult child, then go through that questionnaire with them. Do it with another agent. Do it with your PC coach or a leader in your office. Just walk through those questions to feel how they feel. And I would recommend that you walk through them as an agent. So walk through it in your own shoes, but then also have somebody take on that agent persona and you be the client and see how that feels. I think you can get a lot of value from how that feels in ensuring that you're not asking questions in a way that does sound a little bit judgy or that sounds like you are being nosy, right? It's the difference in the feeling of somebody who's nosy and all up in your business and framing those questions in a way that is coming from curiosity. And so I think having both perspectives of this is how I'm going to ask these questions of folks as I'm qualifying buyers, but also feeling what that feels like so that you can start to see those nuances and recognize those nuances of, maybe certain words or certain phrasings might make you go, ooh, feels a little cringy. I'll make sure I don't do that. Are you guys all willing to do that? To take this role play and do it with somebody in your world? Awesome. From both sides. Remember, do it from both sides. I think that's going to be really beneficial for you. Okay. All right. So we have identified our A, B, and C buyers. We've asked some questions to determine those qualifications on whether they are able, ready, and willing to buy, so that we have put those kind of A, B, and C labels together there. And now you may have different nurture plans. You might have different SMART plans that plug into those different populations, right? If you have an A buyer you really want to be communicating with them at the very least once a week, right? With a B buyer, that might be a little bit less frequency. Maybe it's one or two, or one every 1 or 2 weeks. And with C buyers, you might have a little bit less frequency. So keep those things in mind, that you might have different touch campaigns to connect with those people once they're getting into the beginning side of looking for that transaction. Okay. And this is your next session that you're going to do, I believe next week, is actually specifically on making that connection with the buyer and getting that relationship, getting that buyer agreement. So we're going to zero in a whole lot more specifically on buyers and how we win that buyer every time. So we're going to go even deeper there. We're kind of scratching the surface and going one level deep here. And then on that next session, you're going to go much, much deeper. So with that, we've looked from a buyer perspective, but that, of course, is only half of our spectrum. And the other side is sellers, right? We want to qualify our sellers as well. We want to kind of go through that same kind of qualification process where we ask those questions and we kind of identify that A, B, or C readiness, whether their ability, their readiness, and their willingness to go, so that we can find those motivated people and get into that listing agreement. Now, again, this is something we're going to go deep in on the following session. So after session 14 is going to be 15, where we win with sellers. So those are upcoming, and we're going to go deeper on those in the next couple of sessions. But today we're going to talk about how we start to qualify those sellers. So if you turn in your manual or your participant guide to 13.9 or 158, depending on your version, of course, we have that same sort of format, that questionnaire, to ask those questions and connect with sellers. So Zdenka, you said you might be willing to play this out with me. So
Sure.
do you want to be the agent or the seller?
I'll be the seller.
Okay, I'll be the agent.
All right.
right.
So we can learn from you to be
All
an
right.
agent.
We're gonna walk through this together. Try not to make your answers too crazy though.
Sure.
But you know,
course.
you feel free to use a silly accent, or I like to do Mickey Mouse. It's fun for me. Or if you
I
want-
already have an accent and I can't get rid of it. So
Well, it's not a
get
silly
both.
you could talk like me. That's pretty goofy.
No,
Or
it's
if
okay.
you want to be honest on these questions, like with your own answers, you can, or you can just make stuff up as we go.
Sure.
Either way works for me. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a call. Ring, ring, ring. Hey,
Hello.
Zadika. Now I can't even say your name. I wanted to chat with you for just a few minutes because I wanted to ask some questions that will help me provide you with the best service. You said that you are looking to sell your home. And
Yes, that's correct.
And as you know, because we talk on the regular, because we're best friends, that's what I do for a living, is I help folks do that. But even though we know each other really well, I want to make sure that I am approaching this scenario with you in the best way that I can. So I'm going to just verify some information and ask you some questions. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
Okay. Now, remind me, I know I've got your cell phone number, but I just want to make sure I have it written down correct. Can you verify that for me?
Sure, no problem. 773-999-9999.
And Zdenko, is that your real number?
No.
I was gonna say that was like the coolest phone number ever. Okay. Okay, that's what I had, but it's speed dial number 2. So I just wanted to make sure I have it in here correct. You prefer text messaging over calls, right? That's usually how we connect.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. I don't want to be calling you in the middle of the day and have you disrupt whatever you're doing. So
Sure.
thank you so much for that.
No problem.
And then remind me of your address. I know I've been there 100 times, but just remind me what your address is so that I can make sure I
Sure.
have the ability to look up information for you.
It's 1234 North Main Street.
Oh, I knew it was on Main Street, but I thought it was 1235. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So as we're diving into this, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called a market analysis. And
That's
that's
great.
going to give us kind of an idea of where your home compares. So as I'm doing this, I have some questions to make sure we're getting those details right.
All right.
So, how did we get connected? Remind me how you found me as an agent.
Sure. Yeah. Through my friend and neighbor, Deborah Miller.
Oh, that's right. I remember now. Deborah connected us after I worked with her when she was when I helped her buy a new home when she was
Correct.
downsizing.
Yes.
Well played. Okay. That's right. I remember now. Now let's talk a little bit more about you. Where is it? Do you have a specific neighborhood or area in mind that you're looking to move when you sell?
We are moving back to Europe.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And why now? Why is the time when you want to go back across the pond?
Oh, we want to travel and be close to a family, and decided that we want to move there, but we'll still probably be coming back and forth because of children.
Sure. Okay. So still, so with that in mind, are you looking to move pretty quickly? What's kind of your timeline that you're looking at to go ahead and make the move?
Well, probably in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, so the next 3 to 6 months. So if for some reason we were able to sell your home in the next 30 days, would
That's
that
fine.
be okay? It wouldn't
That's
create
fine.
any hardship or issues for you if we move
No,
a little bit faster.
absolutely not. We can
Okay.
move in with the children until we're ready to completely move back to, across the
Okay.
ocean.
Perfect. That's really helpful for me to know because I definitely don't want to put you in any sort of pickle.
Sure. Absolutely.
What if on the flip side, if for some reason we weren't able to sell the home and it was on the market for 6 or 8 months, would that cause any issues for you?
No, we can probably look into renting for a while and then try again in
Okay.
a few years.
Okay, that's really good to know, just to know kind of the flexibility of the situation, because I want to make sure I'm taking care of you and I don't want to come across as, pushing you too hard or not pushing hard enough to get your home sold.
Sure.
So I really appreciate you kind of giving me that feedback.
Thank you.
Now let's talk numbers. Do you
Okay.
have a ballpark number in mind that you're thinking on what the valuation would be when we sell your home?
Well, we'll probably have to wait for the evaluation, but what the markets are right now with what our house by the size and everything, we're thinking probably between 500 and 600K.
Okay, that gives me a great place to start. With that kind of in the back of my head, of course, I'm going to do that valuation and that
course.
market analysis and see kind of where we sit. But it may very well be in that range. And if it's not, we'll look at why it's a little bit more or why what we can do to bump it up a little bit.
Sure.
So thanks for clearing that up. Okay. On that same front, do you owe anything on this home or do you own it outright at this point? Have you paid off your loan?
We actually do still have a mortgage on it,
Okay, do you know about how much you owe?
about 200.
Okay, just want to keep that in mind and our ability to make sure that for sure we need to get that covered for you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So then I'll be sending over a kind of an additional packet of information. Before we connect, will you just go through that and see if you have any questions so that when I come and meet with you, we can get those taken care of? Will you just take a look at that packet?
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. I'm going to send that over as soon as we get off the phone so that I can make sure I cater it to what you're looking for.
All right, thank you.
Right. And speaking of meeting, I was looking at Thursday afternoon. Would 2 or 3 o'clock be better for you on Thursday?
3 o'clock.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to go ahead and get that in. And are we going to go ahead and meet at the house?
Sure, yes. So we can
Perfect.
show
That'll
you the
give me a
house and
great
everything.
opportunity to
Yes.
check it out.
All right. That's
Awesome. So I know I'm going to send over the packet and see if you have any questions, but do you have any questions for me now before I let you go?
No, not right now. Let me go through the packet first.
Okay, perfect. And then, will it just be you that I'm connecting with on Thursday, or will there be anybody else who we're going to need to connect with on that day?
It will be me and my husband, both.
Okay, perfect. Then we have both perspectives, so you both can kind of
Sure.
ask any questions and get any opinions or thoughts, so that I have the full scope as we're moving forward.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Well, then I will see you on Thursday at 3. I hope you have a great evening.
You too. Thank you. Thanks for calling me.
Thank you. Thanks for chatting with me. And
Sure.
thanks for playing role play with me. It's fun. It's a great time. We're all having fun now. Okay, so
Thanks.
what stands out? Zdenka, thank you again for participating with me. What stands out in our seller questionnaire as we're finding out things about our listings? You say it naturally, yet it's scripted. Well, thank you. And the reason for that is just doing it, right? You get better at these things by doing the role play. I will be fully honest with you when I'm having those conversations over a phone, and y'all may have seen it. I'm looking at it like it's right here. Like I'm, I have the basic question. I'm going to adjust some of the words and things like that. But having the questions there so you don't forget anything can be super helpful. And then also having those conversations, doing that role play. That's why I, ask that you guys do that with somebody, is because the best way to get better at these things is to have more of these conversations. So thank you for calling that out, Jennifer. And hopefully it's natural for you guys too, because here's the reason why it should be natural is it's just a conversation. Like there's nothing big or scary about the questions we're asking. We're trying to say, hey, I want to help you. How can I best do that? I know sometimes people get nervous, especially when we're going to listing appointments. That can be a little bit nerve-wracking. But if you really come in framing it in your mind that you're just trying to help them, and in order to help them, you have to know the answers, right? We've got to know those answers so that when we go to that listing appointment, we're not out in left field when they wanted to be talking about certain numbers and certain things and certain timelines. You don't want to be talking about something different. Make sense? What else stood out for y'all in either one of those questionnaires? Anything that you noted were key metrics that we talked about in both? Who's going to be there at the appointment? Yeah, so there's super obvious things like what kind of numbers are we talking about and what kind of timeline, and those things are super obvious. Also super important is who are we going to be talking to when we have that appointment, when we meet with the buyers and sellers? Who are we going to be connecting with, and who should we be connecting with, right? Who are those decision makers that are going to have an impact on this transaction, to make sure that we're not getting one perspective when we've got two different parties who are going to be involved here.
And that's so true when it comes to an estate or whatever, because there's always one elder sibling that thinks that they're in control, and it might not be the case at all. So you need to research that right from the beginning. So
yeah. And even something as simple as we confirmed the address for our seller, right? So that we can do just that. Like I can run that over into the CAD and I can look up who's the owner and what the situation is on that property. So that even though maybe Deborah said she's the person, well, it turns out it looks like ownership on that is with Lisa. Well, I may have to do some follow-up there and find out. So, confirming all of those things before we get in front of somebody who may or may not be the sole decision maker or even a decision maker is really important. Anything else that stood out for y'all? Okay. So by asking these questions, we've done exactly the same thing that we did with our buyers. We can now identify those people who are in those A, B, and C timeframe categories, right? We know who is able, ready, and willing. Oh, Lindsay, good point. Making sure that when you roll out the end of that conversation, that appointment is set. One of the things that we do when we do that qualification is reiterate that appointment, right? So we identified we're going to meet Thursday at 3, and then I said, is anyone else going to be there Thursday at 3? And then at the end of the conversation, I said, okay, great, I'll see you Thursday at 3, right? So reiterating that information of when that appointment is scheduled for can be really important as well. Okay. So what we've done is we've identified those A, B, and C sellers, and now we can decide what makes the most sense on what to connect them to, right? Like we talked about with the buyers, you might have these folks on different smart plans depending on those different stages. And again, we're going to go into that a little bit deeper when we go into session 15. But keep in mind that these are, we talked about the 36 touch smart plan where we are getting them to this conversion. And now this one to cement is what we're doing here with this questionnaire and getting them from that relationship and follow up into that transactional phase. Okay, so this is kind of the pivot where we go from that follow up into navigating and getting into that transaction. Okay. All right. Any questions that y'all have about either of those questionnaires? Okay. All right. Well, y'all know that we all get better when we have feedback. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm actually working on my KWU certification. So that is a way that we identify folks in our company who are good trainers and who encourage people to come to training so that y'all don't fall asleep during my trainings, hopefully. Those are the people we want to be able to get connected to folks to help them get connected to trainings. So please, 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 if you would be so kind, bust out your phones. Again, I know you have them. I know what you do for a living. So please pull that up on your screen and either go to kwueval.com or scan my fancy QR code. I know Brad is a fan of my QR codes, those quick responses, right? If you would please go in there and leave some feedback on the course and on my presentation today, I would greatly appreciate that. I'll give you just a minute there to get in there, and I'll drop the link here in the chat as well. A couple of other things I do want to touch on before we go. We've got a little bit of time tonight. Just a reminder that we have a 501c3 program in KW Cares. You have the ability to donate within your transactions. So with every transaction, every closing you have, you can donate $5, or you can always scan this QR code and contribute at any time. KW Cares helps us when we have, natural disasters. We've had several of those in the last several years, and KW Cares is often one of the first response teams that shows up to those, and they help some of the other teams get plugged in and lined out. This is really just a great way for us to take care of our people and our families. It's really all what KW is all about, is really making sure that our people are taken care of. We also have a program that is established to really create the future. Oh yeah, that's absolutely true. Thank you for calling that out, Jennifer. KW Cares came to New Bern. And as usual, they were one of the first ones there. There was they had a couple of trucks up in that area trying to get to some of the areas that were inaccessible. They staged in that area and were trying to get up into some of the mountainous areas, and were among the first response teams up there. Our next gen community is really all about building the future and setting the next generation, not just of real estate agents, but of humans up for success, primarily through Quantum Leap. Also, if y'all have not taken Quantum Leap, I highly recommend it. But KW Next Gen is really focused on bringing up leaders in our communities and in our businesses so that they are ready for this next phase of their lives and can approach it in a way that's going to be meaningful and impactful, not only for them, but for the people around them as they are growing their lives and their businesses. All right. Any last minute ahas or questions before I let you all go back to bed? Because for some of you, it is very late. All right. Awesome, friends. Well, if you think of any questions, again, my name is Jamie Henley. You can reach me at jamiehenley@kw.com. And make sure you tune in on Thursday. So that's tomorrow, to talk about some of the technology and how these things plug in, and a little bit deeper on some of those smart plans and how to set those up and get those rolling, as well as some of those tagging options that you can build out in your database to make sure that it is working for you. All right. Have a great evening, my friends. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. All right, Lisa, Jennifer, Assad, any questions that y'all had for us? All right, my friends, have a great evening.